PlayStation or Xbox?
Remember that India has been a base for a lot of traditional outsourcing studios. But when you think of Witcher and Poland and how that,
What do you think is the state of battle royale games in India?
we believe 450 million gamers play a battle royale in India. I would just say that we have reached a point where we can actually predict a release date, and so I don't know whether you really need to go to a real college to kind of do a lot of these things. Game development is an expression of art, right?
Okay, so for those of you who do not know Roby John, he is the CEO and founder at Super Gaming, India's very own game developer based out of Pune, India, and they have been making Indus Battle Royale. I don't know how the development cycle has been, but for the past couple of years now. But yeah, so before we get started, I am going to throw a rapid fire round at you, Robbie. So, if you were to choose a starter between Charmander, Squirtle, or Bulbasaur, which of them would you pick?
Hard question. Both of them are my favorites, but Bulbasaur would kind of be my favorite in this case. The reason that I said both of them are my favorites is that I've got two kids, and each one of them plays Pokemon with each of those characters on this.
Oh, nice.
So my son will be loving me right now. I'll pick his favorite character.
So, and what is your preferred device of choice when it comes to mobile gaming?
I've always been an iPhone guy. I had an iPhone since the first version of the iPhone, so that's kind of comes in from both my background. I was one of the first developers on the iOS platform in India as well.
Okay. So, naturally, that brings me to the question: which is more easier to develop on iOS or Android?
Android by far. Android is much faster deploy, faster to build. iOS, you have to kind of use the chain, deploy it to test flight, integrate it, test it. Android, can you deploy it over the air, share it, it all works. So obviously, we create a lot of builds every day, but we create more Android builds than iOS builds.
Okay. So, RPGs or linear action adventure games?
Linear action adventure games. Lack of time mostly to kind of play a lot of RPG MMOs.
When you're gaming with friends, let's say during a couch co-op session, what kind of games do you like to play? Fighting games or sports games?
I'm only playing Brawlhalla. FIFA maybe, but Brawlhalla mostly, both my kids are good at Brawlhalla, so the family couch game is usually Brawlhalla.
Okay, so you are a Brawlhalla and Super Smash Bros kind of person.
Correct. I love my Switch, so kind of keep playing a bunch of games there.
Right. If you were to play one game for the rest of your life, I mean that game, you only get to play one game, which would it be?
Indus.
Clever answer. Okay, last but not the least, PlayStation or Xbox?
PlayStation by far.
All right. So that was a rapid fire round, and with that, I'll be coming to more serious stuff. Not serious in the literal sense, but I think you get the gist. So when it comes to game development in India, right? When it comes to, let's say, talent hiring and talent acquisition, how do you think that is different compared to the West, wherein the big developers are?
See, Shaurya, we faced this when we originally started. Like we said, as a game development company, we used to hire trespassers. But over the last few years, as I've built a studio, all of this talent is now coming through. Remember that India has been a base for a lot of traditional outsourcing studios. So there's talent available, but they've not been making a game. They've been working on games as an outsourcing job, but never kind of making a game end to end, whether that's IP development, understanding what a customer wants. That piece is missing. The whole culture of indie development, which kind of see fairly very, very widespread in the West, is kind of missing. So you can't get that talent straight out of the bat. But a lot of those people have cut their teeth on development projects. And you'll see a lot of the successful studios kind of making games previously worked at some game studio.
Right.
Today, the challenge is obviously learning new things. But I also do think that, originally, you had a plain engineering degree. Now you're kind of getting the specializations in game, in game development, some more in design, UI, UX, art. A lot of these careers are now coming through. And, especially in a company like ours, where we see, 140, 150 people, we think that the scene is much better today than it was originally. But when you think of Witcher and, Poland and how that entire game development kind of culture kind of grew around the game, we're seeing that happening as well.
When it comes to, you are developing Indus, so you must be knowing a lot of the battle royale genre. So, what do you think is the state of battle royale games in India? I mean, BGMI got banned, then it got unbanned. There is a lot of controversy surrounding that game. But battle royale games in general, where do you think India is at? Do you think we are at the tipping point of wherein like battle royale games would explode, or how's it like?
I'll answer in two phases. The controversies around other games are above my pay grade, so I won't kind of go there. But essentially, battle royale games in India, I kind of learned it firsthand from some of the early developers of battle royale. That they kind of said that battle royales are unique in the sense that if you're watching a League of Legends, you're watching any kind of TDM shooter or a Valorant or CS:GO, you need to know the game before you can watch it. It's got a bunch of rules, much like cricket or American football. Like, if you don't know the rules of cricket or American football, watching it becomes very hard. But battle royale games are more like soccer, very easy to pick up and watch, and they have a great life cycle, very easy to kind of watch, which is why they've expanded that market in all emerging nations that weren't, let's say, mobile gamers, or kind of you're adding a lot of new gamers to that market without a history or culture of gaming. That's why battle royale games are, so to say, the e-sport of India. We believe 450 million gamers play a battle royale in India, have played a battle royale in India in the last 12 months. That's where we kind of see this large market, and this market also monetizes, which is why it's very interesting. Obviously, around it, the entire ecosystem of streaming, esports is kind of the halo for the battle royale genre as well, because there's so much more talent coming inside of it, and that's really why we kind of think about like there is going to be a persistent demand for this. Because think of it as India has got a very, very large generation of esport players that India is bringing in. 700 million people under the age of 20. Now, all of these are potential watchers, first game adopters for all of it, which is why we kind of are focused completely on the mobile genre. We believe it will be the most dominant genre of gameplay over the next 3 to 5 years. But remember that battle royale games are also 5 years old. There will always be new twists, new variations that will be coming to it, whether that's a looter shooter, survivor, extractor. And you'll see Indus kind of provide Indus is our attempt to kind of make a modern battle royale shooter.
Right. Speaking of Indus, I don't know how much can you share about the release window, but do let us know how far has the development come, because from what I've covered personally, I think there have been a lot of community play tests now. You have hit 5 million on Google Play Store. What's the development cycle like currently, and where's the game at? When can we expect it?
I wish I would have a straight answer for it, but I would just say that we have reached a point where we can actually predict a release date. Still kind of working through it, because we've kind of nailed, so to say, the gameplay pieces inside of it, incorporated a lot of the user feedback, which I think is critical for a game. Like, if you look at my last game, Gun, it was 3 years in soft launch, by which we actually learned from users. We're a build-in public company, so learn quite a bit from users, kind of build the game to suit an audience, kind of figure out how to kind of master genre before we launched. Playtests are just a different way of kind of doing the same thing. We're trying to understand, going to different cities and saying that what does this player like from this kind of game that he spent 1,000 hours on? Why is he playing this game? What does he not like in this game? So that's kind of where we can do playtests, by not asking people like a questionnaire, but actually playing our game and seeing what that skill transfer might kind of look like. So that's kind of something of our approach in terms of how we built our game. But the clear path in terms of thinking about the funny answer to everybody who asks me like when is the release coming out, I always tell them when it's coming. We are as excited to put it out in the hands of players as everybody else. Every esport kind of improves our confidence levels, tells us what to like, what people like, what they don't like. But currently in our retro, we completed a playtest last week. We had a crazy amount of feedback. We actually go and get feedback from 100 to 100 other players, incorporating that feedback, thinking about it thoughtfully, thinking about it as trend versus improve. These are all parts that development cycle kind of goes through. But we're going to close beta later this year. From there, we'll actually predict out what a soft launch and what a full launch would look like.
On mobile, we have seen games like Apex Legends, BGMI now. Well, they are those games, but what is the inspiration behind Indus per se? What made you develop a game? You said it's a Indo-futuristic battle royale, so do enlighten us about the cultural elements that are present in the game.
We obviously, when you think about making a game, we think about how wide can our distribution go. So we chose the name Indus because that's literally the root of our civilization. And we often debate whether it was Mesopotamia or Indus that was the first civilization. So we are 4,000 or 8,000 year old civilization. And everybody's studied Indus, Mohenjo-daro, Harappa in school. So we thought that's an easy word to kind of people to recall, understand. The second part is, we kind of clearly understood that all of us as this generation are very proud of our, ancient history, culture, civilization. But there's nothing of that we can actually project out to the future of what would that look like. So we said that, hey, what does an aspirational generation want? It wants a validation that we come from a rich history culture, but it's also this futuristic vision for where we can be. I thought that the movie Black Panther did this really well, where it kind of said, traditional art culture of Africa, but Wakanda is the most futuristic city in the world in that universe. So we said that, hey, why not think about what Indus is building as the Wakanda of India, trying to build this Indo-futuristic version of it. And that kind of gave us both, the rails to kind of be, completely original, authentic in what we're trying to build, but at the same time, build it around a large theme and a theme that appeals to a lot of players of things that nobody's seen before. And that's really why we kind of built this, Wakanda of India, Indo-futuristic version, because we saw a lot of demand both within our people in India, but also from the West, which has never seen something like this at this scale.
Okay, so what are some of the other games that you think represent our culture really well?
I think Raji does a good job. If you played Raji, also made in Pune. Big shout out to those guys. Those guys have actually done a great job in terms of depicting Indian art, culture, folk music, a lot of that. And I thought that that was really a good example of what other people could do as well. And I thought that we'd been making Indus around that time as well, and that was kind of for us a good example of, hey, here's a game that's kind of successful. People have kind of adopted it and kind of pushed the envelope to kind of say what's possible out of India.
Okay. So that I'll be shooting my last question to you, and this is regarding the budding developers in our country. So
Sure.
what's the situation like? Can you give us a few quick tips which like budding creators and developers can follow if they want to start with game development as a career? Let's say if I'm an 18-year-old, I want to get into super gaming. What do I need to do?
Perfect. So I would say that, a lot of people, kind of think about like playing games as kind of game development. I think like playing games is one portion of it, but that inherent curiosity of how is this made, why is it made this way, what are the various parts inside of it, has kind of been the driving factor in most of my teams. A lot of my teams have kind of people who've grown up in game development, learned about these things when they were in school. So I think that inherent curiosity of knowing how is this made and being very, heads down in terms of figuring it out. Because game development is a variety of things. There is the programming aspect of it, there is the server aspect of it, there is the netcode, multiplayer aspect of it, which is very advanced. But there's also the 3D aspect of it, animation, VFX. So it kind of says that, hey, what do you kind of be interested in? And then kind of learning by doing. Today, it's a very different situation where a lot of these things of how to get started, what to make, how to make it, all of these master classes exist on the internet. If you search for a little while, you'll actually find, all of these courses, classes, all of it already available. And so I don't know whether you really need to go to a real college to kind of do a lot of these things. Going to a college has really helped in the social aspect, like you meet other leaders. Simply because, now within, we have a lot of people from the same class at a college. Simply because now you met somebody, you're a programmer, you met an artist, you met a, designer, you met, somebody who's doing animation. So that's kind of somebody that you kind of go in and collect. So I thought that colleges really serve that purpose as being that watering hole, gathering place for a lot of budding game developer talent and allow people to learn a lot more than the one thing that they were good at. But I do think that the internet is really good at kind of providing you with all that information, feeding you. in listening to how games were made has kind of been one of our best kind of educational experiences. We've read through personally to almost every game postmortem of how the story of every game that's been ever made, and I thought that that was kind of inspired us both. But it also kind of, from my perspective, the reason that I kind of felt like, becoming a game developer eventually kind of became my career was that I love to hang out with a lot of game developers. Back in 2008, 9, 10, when we were just starting out, remember that game development was not a very glamorous job. These people are people who are generally ostracized by their families. Their families support them. Their families are मेरे बेटा कुछ तो कर रहा है, game खेलते रहता है दिन भर. So we didn't really have that support, in the early days. I thought we kind of, but those people were still heads down. They were still very passionate about it. They were kind of building around it, and I thought that that's really the number one thing that I've seen in a game developer. मतलब if you have the, मतलब हम लोग बोलते हैं चाह रहेगी तो राह निकलेगी. So that's kind of the first thing that you've got to ask yourself of saying that, hey, am I completely passionate about this one thing, or am I just coming to it because it's a fad or it seems cool? We think that game development has got a lot of tourists, but very few permanent residents. We consider ourselves as a permanent resident in this space, and that's kind of something that we've kind of learned to kind of ask people and say that, hey, are you really interested in it? What games have you played? What do you like about it? What do you want to kind of tell your audience? Game development is an expression of art, right? Self-expression, your art, your programming is art in that sense. And I thought that that's really the kind of people that we've attracted. I would always tell people to follow their passion. If you're passionate about any one of these areas, I'm sure you'll figure out a way to kind of get there. We do put out a lot of content on our channels as well in terms of how we're making things, why we're making things this way, what our backgrounds are, and how did we kind of end up here. And hopefully we can do a lot more as well as we kind of go along.